I had to do this. I just could not resist this interview with Jordan Peterson. He was interviewed about his ideas in his recent book, and it was hilariously misinformed and bizarre. But most interestingly to me, he walked right into my wheelhouse and made some specific claims about evolution and nervous systems that were straight up idiotic and ignorant.
And the reason that I write about lobsters is because there's this idea that hierarchical structures are a sociological construct of the Western patriarchy. And that is so untrue that it's almost unbelievable.
But the hierarchies of Western culture are sociological constructs. That hierarchies are common emergent responses to many social patterns does not make them less of a construct. The specifics of a solution is not fixed and predetermined, unless Peterson thinks all hierarchies are identical, which would be absurd. Unfortunately, it turns out that he does think that. He thinks that the properties of the social behavior of lobsters and people are the same. This is a sign that he is a loon.
And I use the lobster as an example because the lobster, we divulged from lobsters in evolutionary history about 350 million years ago, common ancestor.
No, that is ridiculous. 350 million years ago puts us in the early Carboniferous. Does he think lobsters evolved from sharks or sarcopterygians? There were diverse forms of both chordates and arthropods in the Carboniferous. The last common ancestor had to have long preceded this period. And it did. The best estimate of last common ancestor was that it lived deep in the Cryogenian, long before the Ediacaran, about 700 million years ago. Now you might argue that this is just a pedantic detail, but this is coming from a guy who is an academic, who claims the facts matter, is trying to use evolution to prop up his theories. Do they or don't they? This is an egregious error. You can't argue for evidence from evolution if you're going to be that wrong. There's also a deeper logical error. He's describing two extant species, lobsters and humans, and claiming that a behavioral property of lobsters was present in our last common ancestor and therefore is also present in us. That makes no sense. It's like claiming that I have a mustache, and therefore my great-grandfather had to have had a mustache, which means that my brother must also have a mustache. He has just picked a species that has a trait he wants to claim is universal, and extended it without good evidence. I can do the same thing. I'll pick a different arthropod, say bees. Then I'll point to a random vertebrate, say a bear. Then, because bees are social animals and live in hives, I declare that bears are also social animals that live in hives, make honey, and will sting you with their butts if you disturb the queen bear. His understanding of evolution is pure gibberish. What about his understanding of the nervous system? He is a professor of psychology, so that must be a little better, right? Wrong.
And lobsters exist in hierarchies, and they have a nervous system attuned to the hierarchy. And that nervous system runs on serotonin, just like our nervous systems do.
Everything about that is wrong. No nervous system runs on a single neurotransmitter. Serotonin is one of many. This is another fallacious comparison, like saying that because my little Honda runs on gasoline, and so does a Ferrari, these cars have identical properties in all significant respects. There is a reason we both have serotonin. Serotonin is a biogenic amine. That is, it's simply a common amino acid, tryptophan, that has been chemically modified. It's simple. It's ubiquitous. Serotonin is found in bananas. Does that mean bananas are hierarchical? Monoamines are neurotransmitters in cnidarians, in nematodes, in just about every animal. It's found in tetrahymena, as well as lobster. Peterson might as well have suggested that because lobsters contain proteins just as we do, we're behaviorally just like lobsters. Because we contain carbohydrates Just like jellyfish and every other animal, jellyfish are a good model system for studying human behavior. And this is coming from a psychologist. It's infuriatingly bogus. To quote Peter Medawar, endocrine evolution is not an evolution of hormones, but an evolution of the uses to which they are put. An evolution not, to put it crudely, of chemical formulae, but of reactivities, reaction patterns, and tissue competences. So focusing on a common hormone is completely missing the boat on the functional organization of the nervous system.
And the nervous system of the lobster and of the human being is so similar that antidepressants work on lobsters.
Yes, because serotonin is a ubiquitous neurotransmitter. Anything that affects its synthesis or degradation will influence the nervous system. This is another misleading fact. Antidepressants do not affect lobsters in the same way as they do us. Their brains are very different in organization. Remember that Medawar quote? They're using the same basic tool, an amine, but what matters is the uses to which they are put, which Peterson has not tested, shown, or demonstrated in any way. I have to quote a review on the effects of antidepressants on crustaceans. This is a matter of some concern because our sewer systems are leaking this stuff into the environment, so we have to examine their effect. Recent studies on the effects of antidepressants on these two important groups, molluscs and crustaceans, show that molluscan reproductive and locomotory systems are affected by antidepressants at environmentally relevant concentrations. In particular, antidepressants affect spawning and larval release in bivalves and disrupt locomotion and reduce fecundity in snails. In crustaceans, antidepressants affect freshwater amphipod activity patterns, marine amphipod photo and geotactic behavior, crayfish aggression, and daphnid reproduction and development. Peterson is distorting the evidence to fit an agenda. Antidepressants certainly do modify the behavior of various organisms because we share a common molecule, not because our brain circuitry is the same. That an animal responds to antidepressants by spawning or waving its spinnerets cannot be used to imply that its neural circuitry executes complex derived behaviors in the same way as ours.
And it's part of my attempt to demonstrate that the idea of hierarchy has absolutely nothing to do with sociocultural construction, which it doesn't.
He has built a case on false facts and distortions of general observations from the scientific literature. He has not demonstrated anything about sociocultural constructions. Don't be fooled. Not only does he get the evidence wrong, but he can't construct any kind of logical argument from what he is babbling about. He should be embarrassed. I've only looked at a brief segment of a longer interview, and it's appalling the degree to which he is asserting nonsense with such smug confidence. This man is lying to you, and if you fall for any of it, you should be embarrassed.